Bugatti's blowing up my phone. I've had multiple meetings with the CEO of Bugatti. I've had multiple meetings with the director of Bugatti America.
That's simply not true. All the prices you hear about Bugatti service and so on, it's not the truth.
For a few weeks, it looked like a feel-good story. A rich car owner wrecked a rare hypercar. The boss of the company stepped in to help, and everyone online was ready to call it a happy ending. Then, in one short video, that whole story flipped. A trader named Alex Gonzalez looked into his camera and used a single word about mate Rimac, the CEO of Bugatti. That changed everything. He did not yell. He did not threaten anyone. He simply said Rimac was being disingenuous, and that one word was enough to turn thousands of fans against a man almost everyone had trusted just days before. To understand why that word hit so hard, you have to understand who these two people are, what happened to a very expensive car, and why so many normal people who will never own a Bugatti still felt this fight in their own chest. Alex Gonzalez is known online as a Forex trader, the kind of person who built a huge following by filming himself talking straight into a phone camera. He is loud, direct, and usually not afraid to say what he really thinks. Mate Rimac, on the other hand, is seen as one of the most likable bosses in the car world. He started by building an electric car in his own garage as a teenager and slowly turned that hobby into a real company. Today, his technology is used by huge names like Porsche and Koenigsegg. He has a reputation for being calm, friendly, and easy to talk to, which is rare for someone running a company that makes some of the most expensive cars on earth. So when Alex Gonzalez pointed his camera at Rimac and called him disingenuous, it did not feel like a small internet argument. It felt like watching someone knock over a statue that everyone thought was solid. People leaned in close because this was not two random strangers arguing. This was a guy who broke a Bugatti going after the man who runs Bugatti and doing it in public, on camera, for millions of people to see. Just days earlier, Rimac had posted his own video explaining, in a calm and friendly tone, why Alex could not simply fix his wrecked Bugatti any way he wanted. That video shot past 6 million views in only a few days, and most viewers treated Rimac like the only reasonable adult in the whole situation. He sounded caring. He sounded like someone trying to protect a piece of art, not squeeze money out of a customer. Then Alex stepped back in front of the camera and completely changed the mood. He said the safety talk everyone had just watched was really a costume, a nice-sounding story covering up the real word nobody at Bugatti wanted to say out loud, which was control. That single claim is what makes this story matter to people who have never even sat inside a supercar. Almost everyone has felt what Alex was talking about at some point in their life. You buy something, you pay the full price, and it becomes legally yours. Then a stranger sitting behind a desk somewhere far away decides you are not actually allowed to touch it the way you want. That feeling is the exact nerve Alex pressed on, and it is the reason strangers with no interest in hypercars still found themselves nodding along. He was not really arguing about gearboxes or carbon parts anymore. He was arguing about a quiet lie hiding inside the whole idea of ownership itself. What made the moment sting even more was the timing. For weeks, the whole story had been quietly drifting toward a warm, happy ending, with Rimac playing the kind boss and Alex playing the grateful owner who got saved. Alex burned that ending down on purpose, and he told his huge audience that the so-called rescue was never really a rescue at all. The thing that flipped him from grateful to furious was buried inside Rimac's own explanation, hidden in one small claim that Alex and his team had already proven wrong with their own hands. Mate Rimac is not a normal car boss, and that is exactly why his answer to Alex carried so much weight in the first place. He built his first electric car in a small garage as a kid, using little more than passion and stubbornness, and slowly turned that homemade project into a full company. Today, that company sells its technology to giants like Porsche and Koenigsegg, and Rimac himself is known as the most down-to-earth boss in the industry that is usually filled with cold, distant suits. So when a man with that kind of reputation takes the time to answer one single angry owner on the internet, the whole world tends to stop and pay attention. His message to Alex was patient and clever at the same time. He told everyone watching that most of the scary numbers floating around online about Bugatti repairs were simply not true. He pushed back on a popular rumor that a single set of headlights cost as much as a small house, and he gave a real number that was far below the wild claims people kept repeating to each other. He insisted this whole situation was never about squeezing money out of Alex, and that his company genuinely wanted the car saved and back on the road where it belonged. Then he reached the part of his message that clearly mattered most to him personally. He explained that the crash had shattered the gearbox housing and badly damaged the carbon tub, which is a strong frame that the entire car is built around. He said only a small handful of trained people on the whole planet know how to safely separate that rear section from the body without ruining it. To him, this was not snobbery or showing off. It was simple physics and safety, nothing more. He talked about building a machine that should still be driving safely 50 or even 100 years from now, and a company that felt truly responsible for keeping that machine alive that long. He even pulled back the curtain a little to prove his point. He described testing a brand new Bugatti in brutal cold weather, in temperatures around 20 degrees below zero, where the leather on the dashboard stiffened so badly that it could actually change the way an airbag fired in a crash. That, he said, is exactly why you cannot just swap parts around and hope everything works out fine, because the real danger is often hiding inside tiny details that no online repair video will ever bother showing you. For a moment, his message worked beautifully. The car was quietly taken off Bugatti's blacklist, and a repair quote that had once sat close to $1.75 million suddenly dropped to well under $700,000. On paper, it looked like a strict company bending over backward to help a customer it never technically had to help at all. The trouble was that one of those calm, reassuring claims had a hole hiding inside it, and Alex's rebuilder had already discovered that hole simply by reading a few tiny numbers stamped directly onto the actual parts. Watching Rimac's video for the first time, most fans genuinely believed the situation was heading toward a fair and happy conclusion for everyone involved. He came across as thoughtful, not defensive, and he seemed to be treating a frustrated stranger with real respect instead of brushing him off the way a giant company often does. That is part of what made the following twist land so hard when it finally arrived. People do not usually feel betrayed by a company that is cold and distant from the start, because they never expected warmth in the first place. They feel betrayed by the ones who sound sincere, who take the time to explain themselves carefully, and who seem to be offering the full truth right up until a small detail proves otherwise. Rimac's calm tone was not fake in a cartoonish way, but it did leave very little room for the one detail that would soon undercut the entire explanation. The whole magic of owning a Bugatti rests on one simple idea, which is that everything inside the car was made just for that car by hand, at a level no ordinary vehicle could ever come close to matching. That idea is what makes buyers willing to pay such huge prices. And that same idea is exactly what cracked apart the moment a well-known car rebuilder named Matt Armstrong started reading part numbers out loud on camera. Matt Armstrong is famous for buying wrecked supercars and bringing them back to life in front of millions of viewers. And when his team pulled the airbags out of the wrecked Bugatti to rebuild the interior, they did what any sharp mechanic would do. They looked the part codes up. What they found made jaws drop across the internet. The knee airbag and the front passenger airbag carry the exact same part numbers as an Audi A3, which is a normal car you could buy used for roughly the price of a nice watch. The airbag tucked inside the steering wheel matched one taken straight out of an Aston Martin DB11. The very pieces Bugatti had described as untouchable and impossible to simply replace were quietly sitting inside cars with a tiny fraction of the price. This is the part of the story that gets under people's skin the most, because deep down, many buyers of expensive things have always half suspected that some of the magic sold to them is really just a story, and here was solid proof printed right onto the actual components. The exclusivity was real in some places, but in other places it was clearly borrowed from cheaper cars. The curtain did not just slip a little. It got pulled all the way down to the floor for everyone to see. To his credit, Matt never tried to present this discovery as some huge scandal, and that calm, honest tone is actually what made it hit even harder. He explained that big car companies share parts across their different brands all the time, and that Bugatti itself buys many of its airbags from inside the larger Volkswagen family of companies rather than designing brand new ones from scratch for every single model. He said using the correct, already tested part was actually the smartest choice available, not some reckless shortcut taken to save money. He pointed out that after replacing as many airbags as he had over the years, this particular fix was as safe as it was ever going to get. So when Rimac had earlier warned the world that you could not simply swap parts around, the audience already had a strong counterpunch loaded and ready. The story about stiff leather in cold weather had sounded serious and thoughtful at first, but viewers had just learned that Bugatti and a used Audi were sharing the exact same airbag part, and that single fact changed how every careful warning from Rimac landed afterward. None of this discovery would have ever reached a camera at all, though, if Alex had simply behaved like a normal, quiet owner. Everything that followed in this whole saga traces back to one short, reckless message that Alex fired off with a stopwatch in his hand, aimed straight at one of the oldest and proudest names in the entire car world. It is worth pausing here to notice how small the actual discovery really was. Nobody hacked into a secret database or bribed an engineer for inside information. A mechanic simply read a stamp number off the back of a part, the same kind of number printed on almost every component in every car ever built, and typed it into a search bar. That is the whole trick. The information had been sitting in plain sight the entire time, available to anyone patient enough to look for it, which is exactly why the discovery felt less like a clever investigation and more like watching a magician's secret fall out of their own sleeve by accident. Once that kind of proof exists in a video with millions of views, no amount of careful, polished language can fully put the illusion back together again. Back in November of last year, Alex Gonzalez did something that no public relations expert on earth would ever have approved of. He posted a message online aimed directly at Bugatti, and he handed the company a deadline like a man counting down a bomb out loud. He wrote that Bugatti had exactly 24 hours to take his car off their internal blacklist, or he and his team would simply start printing every single part they needed themselves using three-dimensional printers. It sounded completely insane on the surface, and in a strange way, that was really the whole point of posting it. One regular guy with a phone was telling a legendary brand that builds some of the finest rolling engineering art in the world that he would just manufacture his own replacement pieces in a garage if the company kept blocking him. Most companies in Bugatti's position would have simply scrolled right past a message like that. A legal team might have quietly mailed back a cold, formal letter and moved on. What actually happened next belongs in a movie. Mate Rimac himself slid into the messages personally. The note that Alex later showed to the world opened with a simple, casual line that people still quote today. Something close to a friendly hello introducing himself as the Bugatti CEO. The boss of the entire company, a man building hypercars worth true fortunes, was personally typing back to a furious trader on a phone screen. He explained that you genuinely cannot just print a gearbox or a carbon tub with a home printer, that lights and body panels do not work that simple way either, and that he personally want to find the cheapest, most honest road back to a working car for Alex. For one warm moment, the whole tense situation softened completely. Here was the most powerful man in the room, choosing a friendly, personal chat over a courtroom battle. The car got unblocked from the system. Both sides started talking about a sensible repair plan. And the story looked like it was gliding smoothly toward the kind of ending where everyone shakes hands and walks away happy. Then Alex admitted something later on that reframed the entire moment for his viewers. He confessed that the original 24-hour ultimatum had partly been trolling, a deliberate poke designed purely to drag out some kind of reaction from Bugatti, and it had worked far better than he ever dreamed it would. But actually getting a reply was never really his true goal from the very start. Once the cameras were rolling and the CEO himself was watching and responding, Alex began pressing a much harder and more uncomfortable question, one about why his fully paid for car had been locked out of the system in the first place. To really understand why Bugatti had slammed that door so violently to begin with, you have to rewind all the way back to the night everything broke apart, when $4 million worth of machinery met the back of a delivery truck on a quiet Miami street. It says something important about how the modern internet works that a joking, half-serious ultimatum could accidentally open a direct line to one of the most powerful executives in the entire car industry. A decade ago, a message like that would have vanished into a customer service inbox, answered weeks later by a junior staff member reading from a script, if it was answered at all. Instead, the size of Alex's audience turned a throwaway thread into something a busy CEO felt he personally needed to respond to that same day. That shift alone, quiet and easy to miss in the moment, ended up matching just as much of the rest of the story as anything either man actually said to each other. The car at the center of this whole story is a Chiron per sport, and it is not a normal Bugatti by any measure. which is a huge part of why this saga carries so much weight with fans. Only 60 of these cars were ever built in the entire world. It runs a massive 16-cylinder engine, shorter gearing that makes it lunge forward like a startled animal, and a large fixed wing bolted firmly across the back for extra grip. It is exactly the kind of object that serious collectors guard like treasure, and Alex owned one wrapped in a custom purple color that turned heads everywhere it rolled past on the street. Then, in a single instant, it was gone. The car went nose first into the back of a small truck on a busy Miami road, and the front end folded up like a piece of paper. The airbags fired instantly to protect Alex. The damage pushed deep into areas of the car that even experienced mechanics described with a worried, careful breath. Insurance looked the wreck over, called it a total loss, paid Alex his settlement money, and shipped the broken car off to a public salvage auction where anyone with enough money could throw down a bid and try to buy it. This next moment is really what separates Alex from almost everyone else who has ever totaled an expensive car. He decided to buy it back himself. He sat in that salvage auction and placed a winning bid north of $1.5 million. And once all the fees were added up, the wrecked car had cost him close to $2 million all over again, on top of what he already spent buying it new. Plenty of people online were certain he had completely lost his mind. Meanwhile, Alex himself was certain he was about to pull off something that nobody else had ever managed to do before. Bugatti saw the entire situation completely differently from the start. A trained technician flew all the way in from France, studied the wrecked car closely, and the final verdict came down like a hammer. The total loss status was confirmed on their end, and the car's unique identity number was permanently locked inside Bugatti's worldwide computer system. From that exact second forward, not one single official Bugatti dealer anywhere on the entire planet could order even one small part for that specific car. In the company's eyes, the machine was finished forever, a closed chapter of history that they fully intended to keep firmly closed for good. The repair numbers attached to fixing it were seemingly built to crush any small hope Alex might have had left. The early estimate climbed all the way toward $1.75 million just to make it drivable again. A single pair of headlights alone was priced like an entire small luxury car on its own. Individual body panels wore price tags with 6 full figures attached to them. Every single line on that repair quote seemed almost designed to quietly whisper the same discouraging message, which was that this particular car was never meant to live again outside the safety of the factory walls. Most people in Alex's exact position would have read that harsh message, felt the full crushing weight of it settle in, and simply walked away to quietly count their insurance money in peace instead. Alex did the complete opposite of that. To fully appreciate how unusual his choice really was, it helps to picture what most collectors do when a car like this gets wrecked. The insurance payout alone would have covered a comfortable, quiet exit, and nobody watching from the outside would have blamed him for taking it. Buying a declared total loss back at auction, especially one from a manufacturer that had already made its intentions clear, is the kind of decision that friends and financial advisors usually try hard to talk a person out of making, since there is no guarantee it will ever run again, let alone run well. Instead of walking away, Alex reached for his phone and called the one man on earth who is famous for reviving cars that everybody else swears are completely gone for good.